Babysitters, what's the most unsettling thing that's happened while you were babysitting? Serious. Attention. Serious. Tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit if you have any questions or concerns. My sister was babysitting and I got a screaming panicked call from her. She was putting one child down for the night, a girl around 3, I think, and the little boy, around 6, stopped playing, grabbed the chair, unlocked the front door, and left the apartment. She was distraught. I told her to call 911 and I'd come help her with the toddler. When I got there, the police were talking to her and wrapping up. Thankfully, even though it was dark, 2 older women had been out for a walk and found him wandering down the sidewalk of one of the busiest roads in town. The weirdest thing is that the parents were completely unfazed. They apologized for not telling her he had done IT before and wanted her to babysit again. My sister never babysat again. This happened to me. I was babysitting a 4 or 5-year-old boy who was adamant that he wanted McDonald's for dinner. I joked that he would have to use bread ties to pay for it, because I was a poor student at this point. He often played in his room, so I thought nothing of it when he disappeared for 5 minutes. He quietly left the house through the back door, opening the very large back gate and crossing a main road in a sketchy suburb. As I walked down the street looking for him, an old man in a car asked if I was looking for a boy and I said yes. He gave me a lift to the section of the road that he saw him at and I was able to jump out and grab him. No word of a lie, he had a bread tie in his hand to pay for the McDonald's. I'm a mom myself now and thinking about this story always makes me feel so sick to my stomach. I could have been responsible for the death or abduction of this sweet little boy all because of a stupid comment that I made. Apparently I was the same when I was a child. My parents have told me stories of me going on adventures probably as early as 3 to 4 seconds old. One time a neighbor found me way downtown on my tricycle, out exploring, and many different neighbors, acquaintances have apparently brought me home after finding me far from where I belonged. My father was out on walks looking for me on a regular basis and he said one time he was out looking for me he overheard someone in the distance say, "Ah, there goes that father that is always searching for his son." Again, I rarely came home in time for both dinner or bedtime. I find it extremely weird that now at the ripe age of 29 I mostly stay at home and don't go out very often. Maybe I sated all my explorative needs pre-puberty. When I was in high school I used to babysit for a family that had a glass door off their kitchen and whenever I'd get something out of the fridge for the kids I'd think to myself how scary it would be if someone was just standing there looking in. One night it was storming really bad and I went to get one of the kids a glass of milk and lighting flashed and a filthy man I'd never seen was standing there framed in the glass door staring in. I screamed and yelled for the kids to go hide. Of course they didn't listen and ran into the kitchen. Turns out it was their uncle stopping by to drop off something he had borrowed. He worked construction and had gotten quite muddy and was just going to leave whatever it was by the door, which is when I saw him. So it ended up being a case of nothing, but the terror I felt when the lightning lit him up was pretty intense. I live in a small town and our prized possession is a rather large mental hospital. I got a call from the parents telling me to lock all the doors and windows because a dangerous patient had escaped and was in our neighborhood. I told the kids to stay inside, but didn't tell them the reason in order to not freak them out. I went to change a diaper and when I got back the oldest boy, about 8, was missing. I immediately started panicking and went to look in the backyard. He had decided that that was the perfect time to pee outside because the outside potty was better. Bonus: I babysat 2-year-old twins and they often burped and farted at the same time. It was terrifying. I have a crazy aunt and this was about 25 octoseconds ago. I was a teen and I babysat a lot. One evening she called and said her buddy needed a sitter ASAP and I would be paid well for such short notice. She said they were about 6 and 8. Also I was already watching my aunt's kid who was almost 1. She came and took me to the guy's house and I walk in carrying my lil cousin on my hip. The guy thanks me and rushes off to his overnight shift. So it's pretty dim and only a lamp is on. I'm still standing there holding my cousin and introducing myself to the kids, who are retching like crazy. I say what's wrong? And the girl says we have lice. I was so freaked out and so glad I hadn't put my lil cousin down yet. I grabbed the phone and called her mom to come get her ASAP. I said you need to call your friend and he needs to send someone else or get home because no way am I staying. Aunt comes to pick up the baby, and I'm just standing in the living room waiting for the dad to come home. I can see into the kitchen and I start seeing things moving so I walk closer. There were roaches everywhere and they weren't afraid. I was mortified. I didn't even say goodbye to the dad when he walked in. I just bolted to my aunt's car. I said don't ever ask me to babysit for anyone like that again. I went home and showered for probably 2 hours. Babysitting my cousins when I was like 10 and the 3 of them were less than 5. Babysitting is in quotes because their mom was home but I was in charge of them in the bedroom. She was in the living room with my oldest cousin. I was playing with one of them when the youngest, about 2, started coughing, holding his neck. I clearly remember just standing there for 5 seconds, stone cold, completely bewildered. I had no idea what to do. I just froze. Luckily my oldest cousin somehow heard the baby choking and he rushed in. He grabbed the baby and pulled a Barbie shoe out of his mouth. While I still stood there, shocked, I got an earful from my aunt and mom for nearly letting the baby die. I'll never forget it. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't scared. I didn't feel anything, just froze. Let this be a lesson to never let 10-year-olds watch babies. They're just not equipped to deal with disaster. Or at least I wasn't. At 8 or 9 I was put in charge of my infant brother for some reason, got distracted by my lipsmaker's collection, and the little booger climbed up the bunk bed. I didn't even know he could do that. He fell onto the side of a wooden toy box and broke his leg. My mom insisted it wasn't broken even though he wouldn't stand, because he barely cried. Poor Bub got a big banana yellow cast while I sobbed hysterically. I still feel bad about it. He would turn out to just be the injury-prone brother. I don't know why that never tipped him off. It's a bad idea to put children in charge of children. Once I was babysitting a friend's 3-year-old daughter. She had gone to bed and I was watching TV waiting for her parents to come home. Suddenly, she just starts screaming bloody murder. The someone is in the process of killing me type of screaming. I rush into her room and find her sitting up in bed. I sit down next to her, start talking to her, and she is just staring off into space, completely ignoring me. Eventually she settles down and goes back to sleep. Turns out, she had night terrors and this sort of thing was relatively common, but no one had told me and I had never heard of them before, so it really freaked me the fuck out. Another time, when I was about 8ish, my sister, who was 3, and I were being babysat by this teenage girl who had only babysat us once before, but was super cool and awesome. This time, she called her friends, gave them our address and asked them to come over. I was like, dude, this is not okay. I'm not sure about this. But she just laughed it off and said it was cool. After about 20 minutes a car full of stupid teenagers showed up, and they hung out for a bit on our driveway. Thank God they didn't come in the house before leaving. Unfortunately, they ditched my babysitter's boyfriend, so he ended up staying there until my parents got home, which they both knew would be bad. My dad almost shattered the windows on our house when my parents got home. After some yelling, he drove them both home and my mom came and asked me WTF had happened, so I told her that girl never babysat for us, or anyone else we knew ever again. Geez, who doesn't tell the babysitter about their child having night terrors? I feel like there's a list of things that should be checked off every time someone new agrees to babysit. When I was 14 I had the wherewithal to go through a list with the parents and ask any questions they didn't answer. 1. Location of the diapers. wipes, ointments, soaps, formula, anything a child would need to perform the regular duties. 2. A list of contacts left on the refrigerator including the parents, one additional familial contact, and/or a good friend that lives nearby, non-emergency police number for the area, and poison control. 3. Any and all allergies or conditions the child may have. This is what night terrors would fall under. 4. Location of any and all telephones and doors leading outside. The phone doesn't matter as much anymore since most people have a cell phone, but it did matter when people had 1 or 2 landline phones in their house. The doors were to double-check they were locked before putting the kids to bed. 5. Any specific parenting techniques or disciplinary action to be taken. If a child is prone to getting out of bed frequently, how do the parents handle it? Are they allowed to have ice cream after dinner? Do you feel comfortable with the babysitter spanking your child? That sort of stuff. When I was 14, I got hired to sit for brothers, ages 10 and 12. I felt pretty weird about it because well, even by the time I was 10, I was sitting for my younger siblings, but I was like, well, their parents must think they need someone there, and who am I to turn down a king's ransom of $2 an hour? It was the early 90s. It was a nighttime job, so I got the kids into bed as their bedtimes and settled in to do homework and watch MTV until the parents got home. I looked up to find the 12-year-old had emerged from his room and was jerking off, just right there in the doorway, staring at me. I was like, and he was like, "It's okay, I'm 12. I was like, "I don't think it's okay. Go back to bed." But he just lingered in the doorway for the rest of the evening and finally sprinted off to bed when he heard his parents truck in the driveway. I didn't tell them what happened and never sat for that family again. Shit, I had that same thing happen to me as a teen. Same age difference, me at 14, kids at 12 and 10. The 10-year-old kept trying to climb this grandfather clock. When the 12-years-old decided staring and wanking was his bedtime favorite, I rang the parents on their phone. Their lovely dinner date was cancelled. They tried to give me extra as hush money, promised more if I'd sit again for them. Nope. All the nope. I would go far out of my way just to avoid their place. As an adult, I suspect developmental issues with both boys. That's fine. But really, having a sitter that close in age to them who has no idea there's going to be problems was awful. Watching my younger sister, infant at the time, I wasn't much older, like 7, moms in the house, but downstairs dealing with a contractor that came by. Upstairs on the 2nd story, internal balcony that overlooked the central area of the 1st floor. Railings all around the upper edges, with gaps, but pretty small gaps in most cases. Sister is crawling around, puts her head between bars on railing, and her head is small enough that her whole body starts to slip through. I got a hold of her shirt and some diaper before she tumbled completely through the railings, managed to keep the grip and stopped her midair with my arms hanging out the railings, cried bloody murder, and my mom stood below while the contractor sprinted upstairs and pulled my sister up and back in. 30+ years ago at this point, but still remember it pretty damn clearly. I took it pretty well, but parents were quite shaken for a while. Was babysitting my niece. She started crying in her crib upstairs, so I paused Netflix and went up to check on her. The lights were completely off as to not wake her up more. As I was standing in this completely dark room soothing her, I heard voices downstairs in the living room talking about breaking in and taking things. I had been alone in the house. My cell phone was downstairs, and my sister wasn't coming home for another 4 hours. I was freaking the fuck out. After what seemed like forever, I got up the courage to go check out the noise, only to find Netflix had unpaused and it was a heist movie I was hearing. In my 20s I worked many years for a nanny agency and mostly did temp nanny jobs, which meant going over to different people's houses all the time. I was watching some kids I'd never met before, and at night, they lived in a very large, historic home in a nice neighborhood, and the house was actually on the historic register. We were downstairs in the basement watching TV or something, and one of the kids went upstairs, I can't remember what for. I decided to go check on him and ask. I walked up this huge set of stairs. I heard an adult male voice coming from inside the house. My heart just skips a beat and I'm terrified. But the voice is just talking. I follow the sound of the voice, walk across the large foyer, and turn the corner into the giant formal living room, and there's this older man just talking to the kid. I must have looked terrified. BC The man said, "Hi, I'm Grandpa. I didn't know they were out tonight." Holy shit. Grandpa, at a permanent job I was home with the kid, about 6:30 p.m., and as we were sitting in the living room I see some guy walk by the big windows along the living room side of the house. This house was also big and old, and in an urban setting, so the backyard is tiny and the fence for the yard is set all the way back at the back of the house. This guy walks by the side of the house and I can see him go to open the back gate. Meanwhile we're sitting like fish in a fishbowl. BC It's dusk out and the windows are all open. I rush to make sure the back doors are locked. Literally less than 10 from the fence the guy's about to jump, open and of course are all glass, and yell at the girls to run upstairs. I call 911 and try to look and see where this guy is, but I don't see him anywhere. I find the girls cowering in a play tent in the third floor playroom. The police come pretty quickly and didn't find the guy, so we think he was just hopping fences. The mom gets home about 2 minutes after the police leave. As a teenager I was watching a 4-year-old and a baby for the first time when I got really dizzy and felt awful. I called my mom for help. She yelled at me for a bit and told me I'd have to call the parents to leave their date, because she wasn't coming. I said they hadn't left a contact number and asked for help again. She told me to figure it out. I passed out trying to call 911. The last thing I remember before I fell asleep was that they had a pool and terror for the kids. The 4-year-old put his sister in her car seat because she kept trying to go near the water, and then stayed by me to wait for an adult to return. His mom's sister found me unconscious on the floor. She hit me and that brought me around enough to stagger to the car as long as I could lean on something. In retrospect, I'm sure she thought I was high. She offered no help and was livid as she drove me home. I was already a pretty depressed teen, and the shame at not being able to get help for the kids meant I got home and just sort of waited to see if whatever was making me collapse would get worse. I passed out again after getting home, threw up a few times, and then started getting better. I was woozy for several days after. Still no idea about what caused that. I refused to babysit for anyone for months afterwards. The idea of what could have happened was horrifying, but yeah, going from okay to passed out on the floor while trying to dial 911 is the worst thing that ever happened to me. Will be sitting. With that family. Growing up, my friend's mom worked as a babysitter. She was stay at home, but then when dad was home, she was free to go babysit for some other family and pull in some extra cash. Kid she was watching had SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, completely shattered her as a person. She left home. I don't know if she ever came back. At least that was the story I was told. Thinking back now, I suppose it could have been one of those situations where something horrible and violent happened. She ended up in prison, and I got told a sanitized version. When I was 14 I used to babysit 2 young boys while their mother worked from home. There was this one day where the 3 of us were outside on their driveway, the kids playing and me just standing around watching them. For context, I grew up rurally and this was in the middle of nowhere. The house was on an empty road with some neighboring houses in the distances but not close by. Anyways, we're at the side of the house on the driveway and a car drives by, then stops, turns around and pulls into the driveway. There was a man and woman inside, and the woman, tall and blonde and maybe 45-ish years old, gets out and starts walking quickly toward me. The kid's mom noticed somebody had pulled into the driveway and stepped onto the porch to ask who she was and what she wanted, and the woman at the point stopped and said she wanted directions. The kid's mom gave her directions and the woman got back in the car with the man and they left. The whole incident was very innocuous and not really noticeable, only it nevertheless gave me the creeps. The vibes I got off the woman as soon as she got out of the car were pure bad. I felt it in my bones as she walking towards to me. I 100% believed she intended to snatch me and drag me into the car for her husband, and I feel even stronger about it as an adult. She was walking to me so fast, and when adults ask kids for directions, they stay in the car and roll down the window to ask. They don't get out of the car and come at them.